Rohit, welcome back to Social Pros. I should have looked before the episode what number of appearance this is, but you've got to. It's sort of like Saturday Night Live, right? Where you have certain, hosts that come back again and again.
Yeah.
You've got to be up there with Ann Handley and a couple others towards the top of our list of all-time guests here on the program. So you're probably going to get, I don't know, like an embroidered smoking jacket or something sent to your home. So look.
Hey,
for
that's
that.
awesome. I could use another one of those, I got to say.
It's got a separate closet. It's actually truth stranger than fiction, because you are, of course, a very frequent guest on a number of podcasts, not just this esteemed show, because you continue to write books about trends every single year. And this year's book, friends, is the best of them all, I think, in many ways. It is Non-Obvious Mega Trends. Mega trends, not just regular trends, mega trends. How to see what others miss and predict the future. Ro, really an exciting take on it this year. I'll summarize it and correct me where I'm wrong. You sort of took the last decade or so of trends that you've been putting out into the marketplace and sort of rolled them together into mega trends.
Yeah, that's sort of, it's exactly right. It's kind of like a combination of greatest hits, but also not just reprinting what was there before. So it takes some of the past trends, and every one of the mega trends uses past trends as ammunition to say, look, this is more than just a year-long prediction. This is something that's actually been happening for a longer period of time and will happen.
Yeah, it's a really neat premise, Social Pros listeners. It's approximately 150 trends or so that are something like that rolled up into 10 big moves, 10 big trends that are changing all of our lives and our businesses. And as Rohit mentioned, it's not just things that, hey, here's something that you need to get on for 2020. Yes, for 2020, but also 2021 and 2022 and 2027 and 2042. And it is a book that I think everybody in business, whether you're in small business, medium-sized business, large business, B2B, B2C, nonprofit, it doesn't matter. Everybody should read this book. You need to know what's happening around you. In the book, you lay out the 5 mindsets of non-obvious thinkers, and really important material for Social Pros listeners to consider. Be observant, be fickle, be elegant, be thoughtful, and be curious. Which of those do you think are most applicable to our audience, which are primarily social media managers and those doing social media for a living in some way?
It's a bad answer to say all of them. So let me hone in on one that might be surprising to people. Be fickle, right? I mean, a lot of people will tell you to be curious, and I think we generally kind of know what that means, right? Ask questions. But it also means, like, being fickle to me means save an idea and move on. Like, don't dwell on that thing, because sometimes the meaning appears later on in life, right? Like you only figure out why those pieces are connected eventually at a later stage. So some of these things that we hear all the time, even be curious, like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that I should just be reading more? And one of the ways that I found to be curious a little bit more in my daily life is, I have kids, you have kids ask a lot of questions. And, sometimes we're busy with whatever we're busy with, and we don't really answer those questions, or at least try to. Or if you're a dad, we're, commonly known for just making up answers, right?
I just say ask Siri.
Sometimes,
it's easier that way.
Yeah, it's easier that way sometimes. But if you do engage that curiosity and say, look, why are these things like set up in that way? Like, you'll really start to see the world a little bit differently, because you're like, you know what? Like, that is true. Like, why is that? Why do we do that?
One of the things I always find interesting is how you define the difference between a trend and a fad. And I think that premise is really important for our community to understand and keep in mind, because you can get whipsawed real easy in this business by whatever is today's quote unquote conventional wisdom. Can you unpack that a little bit for our crew here at Social Pros?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the place to start is with my very quick definition of what a trend actually is. So what I think a trend is a curated observation of the accelerating present. And that's how I describe a trend. And the accelerating present is the important part, because it's something that's happening right now, and then it'll continue to accelerate. But like you said, I mean, there's trends and there's fads. And one of the biggest differences that I typically find is when people say, oh, TikTok is a trend, right? Usually it's a fad because what you're saying, what you're describing is a platform or a product, as opposed to a movement or a mindset. And so a trend to me is something that is put in behavioral terms. How are we as people thinking differently? It's not 3D printing. It's not, TikTok. It's not a thing. It's a behavior that is encouraged by that thing.
So using conversational apps like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, etc., in lieu of email or SMS might be a trend. It's not a fad because it's a behavior change.
Correct. And the behavior change might be that we are, seeking more direct human ways of connecting with one another, right? And, I do write about kind of human connection. I call it the human mode, which is like the value of human connection in a world where more things are getting automated, right? And the fascinating thing about when you do a trend like that is it also crosses industries. So a lot of times I get the question, you get the same question, I'm sure, when you go into a speaking gig. Well, they'll say, look, all your stuff's great, but like, can you just make sure that it applies to the pharmaceutical industry? Or like, what are the, the question I'll get is like, what are the 5 financial services trends out of your mega trends?
Like, right? All of them?
Yeah, well, that's
they apply somewhat differently, but all of them. That's why it's a mega trend.
Well, look, that's kind of the answer. But at the end of the day, like, I think the other thing that makes a trend is you can find examples of it in multiple industries.
I read all 10 of the mega trends in the new book from Rohit Bhargava, Non-Obvious Megatrends, How to See What Others Miss and Predict the Future. I picked out 3 that I think are particularly appropriate for social media professionals. We'll see if you agree, and I'd love for you to give a little color on these. The first is amplified identity, which really, to me, speaks to the influencer marketing world and all the things that are in the personal branding sort of ecosystem. Can you talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah, I think it'll be immediately meaningful for anybody who's working in social media, right? I mean, it is this idea that as individuals, our identities have become amplified through all of the different places that we can portray them, but also that the way we portray ourselves and the elements of ourselves that we do share are not our entire selves, but are a way that we want to be portrayed, right? So if you think about like, how do I want to be portrayed on this platform versus that platform? What is my digital persona? Am I being a creator, and do I have a creator's name for some of those things? And then on the flip side, like as we create all this content throughout our lives, or if we've been on social media for 10, or I think I joined Twitter back in like 2006 or something like that. So like, I mean, that's been almost 15 years on a platform like that, right? So there's a lot of content. So what happens eventually, when I pass away and I leave this legacy of all this stuff, like who owns that stuff, right? Who manages it? What does it mean? Did it ever actually become meaningful for anybody, right?
Right.
So like, all of these questions about our identity, all the way through from like, who do we see ourselves now, to like, what part of ourselves remains and what part of ourselves lasts. And what's real, right? I mean, with deep fakes and holographic personas and personalities, and like little Michaela or Shudu, or like all of these digitally created avatars, right? Like who aren't even real people, but have connections to individuals as if they were real people, right? I mean, all these interesting things happening. It's a fascinating trend. It really is.